We will now proceed to the main calendar. Third reading calendar number 3. Clerk will read.
A.10277, sponsored by Assemblyman Felix Ortiz. An act to amend the state finance law in relation to prohibiting the state comptroller from doing business with companies that design, manufacture, or sell provocative children's clothing.
Assemblymember Ortiz, and explanations requested.
El impacto negativo de la ropa provocativa para niños y niñas va más allá de la percepción va más allá de la percepción artificial entre jóvenes y las personas adultas. Los jóvenes en particular son más vulnerables a los efectos negativos. Un estudio revelado por la Asociación Americana de Psicología afirmó que tomando en cuenta el desarrollo de identidad de los jóvenes, tomando en cuenta el desarrollo de identidad de los jóvenes y la vestimenta es parte de esto. Es muy alarmante el incremento de jóvenes que están siendo incitados a usar este tipo de ropa diseñado para la sexualidad femenina. Los estudios también muestran que los niños experimentan la insatisfacción corporal, depresión y baja autoestima, cuando están sexualizados a temprana edad. Además, una imagen seductora de los niños puede crear una gran aceptación de los adultos. Una gran aceptación de los abusos sexuales contra los niños. Y viendo niños jóvenes como compañeras sexuales aceptables. Nueva York no puede aprobar esta propuesta de ley.
Thank you. Will the sponsor of the bill yield to questions?
No.
We will now proceed to debating the bill. All those that wish to argue, please stand. Will Assemblymember Castro please raise your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Elizabeth Duran from the New York City delegation, representing Assemblyman Nelson Castro. I rise in favor of this bill because provocative clothing is creating a negative impact on young children's perception of themselves. According to the 2007 American Psychological Report, The Sexualization of Girls by Mary Bailey states that one of the most important tasks of adolescence is to develop a sense of oneself as a sexual being. Today, our culture is encouraging teenage girls to look sexy, yet they know very little about what it means to be sexual or have sexual desires. Children develop their identities as teenagers. In 2010, the American Psychological Association stated that when children are sexualized, it will lead to body dissatisfaction, child abuse, and lower self-esteem. According to kidshealth.org, children with low self-esteem can find challenges to be sources of major anxiety and frustration. Those who think poorly of themselves have a hard time finding solutions to problems. They may become passive, withdrawn, or depressed. The hopes of this bill is to discourage pedophiles and raise awareness in the eyes of parents and realize the negative impact of their children's clothing. Thank you.
Thank you. Assemblymember Bernadetto, please raise your hand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Maria Tapia, New York City delegation, representing Assemblymember Michael Benedetto. I am in favor of this bill because selling provocative clothing to children and young adults will lead to an increase in sexual accusations. A list of studies suggests that boys exposed to sexualized portrayals are more likely to commit sexual harassment as shown in an APA report. Therefore, if there is less provocative clothing, there will be less abuses towards youngsters. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Assembly Member McCavitt raise your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Lindsay Venegas, and I am from the national delegation. I represent Tom McKevitt. I wish to speak against this motion. Americans have the freedom to wear what they want, and passing this bill will limit their freedom. The government shouldn't dictate what is or isn't provocative. Therefore, I urge the members to vote against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Assembly Member Morelli raise your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Jennifer Coles from the Monroe County delegation. I represent Assembly Member John Morelli. I am in favor with this bill. I believe it's the community.
Could you please speak louder? Thank
I
you.
believe it's the community and the government's responsibility to protect youth from being victimized by sexual offenders, establish ethical and morality to products sold by businesses. This would also lead to better morals within the society. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Assembly Member Corlin please raise your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Gianni Melendez. I represent the Western New York delegation. I also represent Assemblywoman Jane Corwin. I wish to speak against this motion due to the following reasons. First, we shouldn't prohibit this type of clothing because we will be violating the First Amendment written under the Constitution, the United States Constitution, of freedom of speech. Because freedom of speech doesn't not just only means verbally communication, but it also means symbolic communication. Also, we shouldn't prohibit this due to the fact that the fashion industry contributes with a big part of today's economy. By prohibiting this, New York State's economy will be affected in a negative way, and at the same time, we will be violating people's rights, mainly prohibiting freedom of speech. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Will Assembly Member Hasty raise your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Stephanie Piquana, NYC delegation representing Assemblyman Carl Hasty. I'm strongly in favor of this bill because it would prevent many negative sexual effects that target children. My Democratic Party may argue that this bill goes against freedom of choice. However, by rising in favor of this bill, I believe that it is a way for us to further defend and protect the children from dangers of pedophilia. In accordance with the American Psychological Association, a negative effect includes a potential increased risk of acceptance of child abuse, a risk that must be heavily taken into consideration with the selling of provocative clothing, as I mentioned before, is the risk of an increase in pedophilia. As stated in a 2007 Mayo Clinic article, pedophiles themselves commonly justify their actions by stating that the child was provocative and encouraged to act in this way. By permitting children of any sex to dress provocatively, we are additionally allowing pedophilia to grow consequent to body exposure. Considering the influence New York State has nationwide, it is imperative for this state to approve this bill. This will consequently send a strong statement to the fashion industry to develop an understanding of the negative effects provocative clothing has on our youth and can therefore lead them to stop supporting these types of clothing. By prohibiting funding to companies that design provocative clothing, New York State would then help prevent these psychological and sexual issues against females and males, because it is needless to say that males are also victims of pedophilia. My fellow colleagues, I therefore stand before you to urge and strongly encourage you to reconsider your opposition and further support this bill as it means to help prevent negative sexual factors from occurring any further. Thank you.
Thank you. May I remind Assembly members that their arguments should be under 2 minutes. Will Assembly Member Kerwin please raise your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Caridad Ramirez, and I'm from the Mid-Hudson delegation, and I'm representing Assemblyman Tom Kerwin. This bill will have no impact on the fashion industry and the companies that sell provocative clothing. The only impact that can be made on the self-provocative clothing for children are the parents who buy such clothing for their children. What this bill is trying to do is send a message that New York State does not support companies that promote and sell provocative children's clothing. As stated in Bulletin G22 of the Procurement and Disbursement Guidelines for the State Comptroller, state procurement laws require that state agencies award contracts only to responsible vendors. Additionally, the comptroller must be satisfied that the submitting business entity is responsible before approving a contract award under Section 112 of state finance law. With that being said, we must have faith in our elected state comptroller to not do business with such companies. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Assemblymember Russell raise your hand?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Carlos Tamayo from the Suffolk delegation, and I represent Ms. Addie Russell from the 118th Assembly District. I would like to begin.
Can you please speak louder?
I would like to begin by stating what this bill means. This bill is not mandating what children can wear. Rather, like paragraph 3 states, we will be prohibiting investments of funds in the provocative children's clothing companies. I have an idea. Why not take these investments and invest it in something better? Invest it in the future of the children by investing in the education of their following years. Thank you.
Thank you. Will Assemblymember Hawley? She will be the last speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My name is Leila Cassandra Bocanegra from the Monroe delegation. I represent Assemblymember Stephen Hawley. I wish to speak against the motion. If we adopt this motion, we would be taking away jobs that our society needs. It is not up to us to decide how much provocative clothing companies make. It is up to the parents of the children. If parents want to keep their children safe, it is up to them to not buy these provocative clothing. Based on this, I urge the members of not to vote in favor of this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we go into the next bill, will Assembly members who have not yet spoken please take this time to consider getting up for the next bills? Thank you. Read the last section, please.
This act shall take effect immediately.
Clerk will record the vote. All those in favor, please stand. Please sit down. All those opposed, please stand. Thank you.
Ayes 55, noes 95.
The bill is defeated. What's the next?